You are now listening to the Youth Fusion Radio Hour.
Wajay gaim sa youth game I can see the good ones cabbage better though. Nick Wapachee and Gasson ide Nemaska ni hudem guy him stisni gdeka dan jish me go to get that but shisha he get the badgemonga to get better on then had they went to the the badgem swang out and had they had danga tianga ude udato dop to consider abot stanga GB debutan ayo the badgemon ek just snoit again hen had got GB debutan and had in EOS GT sun gadelga eskegin shinga de deskutugan den had eskutugajin deno ek eskenden had ni stamsken gatan he bi debutan get to goyo ek egmagen heb shisha he the badgem swanga ek go jim he guy Gabriel yot had the badgem yat egmak titia.
So, do you want to introduce yourself, Nick?
Sure. My name is Nick Wapachee. I'm a community member for Nemaska.
So you live currently in Nemaska?
I'm currently living in Miss Tisney. That's
Okay.
where I'm currently working at. So that's where I am currently located. But I'm still a community member of Nemaska.
Okay. Understand. So yeah, we've been talking about you in the podcast because you were the one who helped us kind of guiding us to how to start a podcast, the steps, and we were thinking you could kind of guide maybe the youth also of like what is the process of starting a podcast. And I think you have your own podcast, right?
Yeah, I do. I do right now. Yeah.
So
Sure.
do you want to talk about your own podcast first and how was your own process and how you came with the idea of doing a podcast?
Sure. So I guess I'll pretty much go back to when I was a student once. I was in Toronto at the time, and I guess I was thinking about trying to create stories that are good. So I've been learning the trade since I was 17, and then only decided to go to Ryerson University for the journalism program. So while I was there, I guess I kind of noticed that the stories of Indigenous people and just the way that they're being reported, and I see the different, I guess, treatment with different stories. So and it always seemed like the stories that would pick up would be breaking news of what's happening in the communities. And this is something that I noticed, and then I was kind of annoyed with the whole, I guess, the trend of what Indigenous stories entail. So I guess that whole time I was like, okay, I want to do something about this. This is not Indigenous stories. Of course, problems are real and situations are real, and and they need to be resolved. So those are, I guess, the things that happened during the time before I created this podcast. But then I was thinking, okay, I want to do something about it. I can't shake this off. I need to create something, whether it be video or audio or print. So I was trying to think of all the ways that I could do this, and also tell stories in the Cree language, because I thought that was the best way to tell Cree stories, in my opinion. So I thought, okay, you know what? I really need to do this. So it took actually 1 whole year after studying, I think about 3 years. So I was thinking, okay, I really want to do something. This is happening like on a daily basis, like always in the back of my head. So one day I was like, okay, why don't we just start recording something? So that's when I started recording, and then really, I guess, introducing, and then I realized, okay, maybe this is going to be a podcast. So so after the recording, I was like, okay, we'll do this, and then just tell people that this is something that we're looking into, and kind of create a buzz, I guess. So posted on social media saying, hey, this is my podcast, and you'll be hearing stories in the near future. So that's pretty much what happened at the beginning, I guess. And it wasn't really like I guess I would say super organized, because I was kind of an amateur at the time. I mean, I'm still learning it, actually. And I realized that it wasn't actually that hard to create a podcast, and there's so many resources out there that like a lot of people might feel like it's a lot, but I think just choosing one and then going with that. And I think
Yeah.
it's pretty much the same with how the audio is going to be delivered anyway, so people can still hear whichever platform you want to hear. And
Yeah.
that's pretty much how it all started. And on another note, actually, with why I felt like this was important at the time, it was with one elder that I spoken to one time. We were just talking about the governance structures, I guess, in the Cree Nations, like chiefs
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So we were just chatting for about an hour, and and I was speaking to him in Cree, of course. Very fluent in Cree, this elder, Roby Matthews Sr. So at the end of it, he was like, you're doing something great here. I think you should continue writing those stories and really telling our voice. So I said, okay, yeah. But ever since that conversation, took a whole year to finally create this podcast.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the backstory of that, of how it happened.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. You've been basically seeing an issue, something you wanted to change, and you kind of decided to really act upon this.
Mm-hmm.
And so what type of stories do you share? How do you come up with your stories? Are they fictive? Are they like what the communities are doing? Are they stories from the elders? So what do you prioritize?
Yeah. So I guess what I envisioned with this podcast is I wanted to have like a conversation with people. So that's how I envisioned it. But at the same time, I think at the beginning, I wanted to also create content that's good and that's audio friendly.
Yeah.
Of course, put everything that I've learned into practice. So that was the whole thing with how I created stories. But mostly, I've been wanting to have conversations with elders, community members, and I'm hoping that I could expand more on it, because of course podcasts are not linear, and there's so much creativity that you can go about what you want in the podcast. And I mean, essentially it's your podcast, and so I pretty much those are some of the things that I would focus on. And I think for me personally, when I started this, I really wanted to, I guess, record our culture and really maintain that that consistency, I guess, with what we could learn, let's say being on the land, or using the language, or using the traditional tools that we may have, and how we would do an activity in the cultural context. But mostly having that kind of like being taught, I guess, or being told in audio, and trying to picture with what the person is saying. And I thought it was like a good idea to kind of do this in the Korean language, because one thing I noticed, that when someone is telling a story in the Korean language, they could really paint the picture of what they're really trying to say. So I thought, okay, this is perfect. It's a kind of a poetic language at the same time. So, of course, mixing storytelling and podcast would go really well, and they did when I started.
Why is it different now?
It still is the same, I would say, of course. I pretty much worked on my podcast, and I guess it's only like the first season because I only did it for 1 year.
Okay.
It's still active as we speak, but
what is the name of your podcast for everyone to hear?
Right, so it's Aussi.
Great.
Yeah, so that's the name of the podcast, and I guess we can say that this is season 1, but that was 2019. Yeah, so
Great.
of course 2020 is a new year, and then of course more content is going to be coming up, and
Were you kind of doing like one podcast a week? Did you have like a schedule, or you were more doing as the story were coming and inspiration were coming?
I think more so like as the stories were happening. Like I still have a couple of audio in my recording, my recorder that I have yet to publish. But then I was thinking, okay, you know what? Let's just we'll continue to use these because these are still pretty relevant. So of course, season 2 is coming up. So I was thinking, okay, we'll just put that audio into that. At the time, I guess with my first season, it was 5 episodes only, but still pretty good in my opinion. When I produced them too, of course, like I mean there'd be biases there, but I actually enjoyed doing the audio, and like really well done. Like I don't think I mean the way it was done, I don't think other Cree people might have done it. I'm pretty sure there's other people who are as talented or more than I am. But I really loved the first season, and yeah.
And you only use the Cree language, so it's for Inuit, for English.
Yeah, exactly. So I use the Korean language, of course, like going back to what I said, like it's such a poetic language, and I guess I kind of, I don't know, I think you really take things into granted if you're living, let's say, in another urban city, and then, being removed from your own space, and then, as you reflect on living your daily life, you realize that the majority of the things that are embedded into your daily life is where you came from.
Yeah.
So I guess the inspiration came about when I was living in Toronto. I was like, I should continue that, and being tugged to kind of go back into my ways and such.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much
that's an
what
amazing
happened.
way also of learning about like learning more about your culture. And I think it has been a similar, like not a similar process for us, but like at first we thought about the podcast, and then we were a bit overwhelmed thinking, oh my god, there's so much, and then we just decided to just do it. And as we were just doing it, we realized it's actually so much fun and so
exactly
enjoyable. And as you said, there's so much possibilities and freedom, and I feel like and you can share afterwards what you think about that, but the advantage with using podcasting, which is only the audio, I feel you kind of have a freedom also to really let go, while if you are doing videos, you're a bit more self-aware of like what you look like, and
right.
so like I think there's a fluency in podcasts that is like much more natural in a way.
Yeah, I think so too, and it's so true. And I like that you said, like, you just gotta do it, just do it. And that was, I guess, my case too. I just didn't, I think I put too much things in my head, like think I need to do this, do that, do this, do that, whereas I just needed to do it. Like and I didn't really need much equipment, to be honest, at the beginning when I did it, and it was still pretty good. Like I was kind of surprised how it turned out, like with little equipment. But now I'm kind of expanding more, I guess, with my space and what I have. So that's pretty much where it's at right now. And then, of course, hoping to bring the same quality or more.
Yeah. We started literally just with Zoom recording, since we all kind of work with distancing at the moment.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
But yeah, if you would have like some tips for the youth of like if they want to start their own podcast, like what would you tell them?
I mean, I think it's pretty clear that both of us, we just did it. So I think that would be the best advice, to just do it. I know for me, like personally, like I said, like I put so much into thought of trying to do a podcast that sometimes it pretty much overwhelmed me, I guess. Like it kind of clouded of what I wanted to do, and like not really taking it into action, that I could almost be lost in my mind space. Whereas I could do something in my physical. So why didn't I just do that? So of course, just do it. Like for me anyways, like I didn't really have that much equipment. Like I had access to equipment while I was in school, but most of the time I was actually recording at home. And I pretty much just did that. I had well, I still do. I have a recorder. So I pretty much recorded from there and then edited I guess like the audio. But as time went on, like I would add my equipment more and more. So now I have like a microphone, which is where I'm speaking into right now. And I have headphones and, all these things, and like a paid subscription, I guess, with like to do like editing with my audio. So I guess it kind of progressed more and more at the time. And I just pretty much did it, and I didn't want to lose what I wanted, and I just really wanted to do what was really, I guess, in my heart, my passion.
Yeah, well, I think it's a very important point. Like when you choose a subject for podcasting, you need to have fun. You need to do it like usually for yourself. You do it, to like share the story. But if you just do it for the audience, also like you're losing that passion,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
kind of like finding what is the thing that even if no one watched it, I would have enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a very key aspect for a successful podcast also.
Yeah, exactly. That's very, very true. Now, I guess it kind of comes down for me. I guess one of the reasons why I haven't really been focusing on my podcasts at this point, there was a period, I guess, when I was working in radio, which I love. Radio is like something that I love doing. Of course, like I put all my creativity and all my passion into it, and with audio and sound, and how do we make this story better, of course. So I pretty much did that for close to about a year, and then I was thinking in the back of my head, okay, when will I have time to do my podcast? So I'm already doing something, obviously, that is very similar, but like not the same, in a different platform. For me, of course, I loved radio, and it gave me space to really put craft into everything that I learned so far. So, of course, at the end of it, I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
The podcast or the radio?
The podcast. So, because I'm already doing radio. So like, there's this battle, I guess, between both worlds. But, of course, I feel like I have more time, to be honest, now. So I'm hoping that, the second season will actually have more content coming in. And I guess I've really, really, really liked doing the podcast. It's really something that I've really put my time into when I was in Toronto, like trying to find ways and really finding the equipment to make it sound nice. So from what I had previously, now I actually invested. Now this is another part, I guess, where, like, of course, you really want to do this and it's something you enjoy. Investing in your time, but also investing in equipment. And it's something that I wanted to do from the beginning, actually. Like, I always wanted to get this thing, this device from the beginning, but at the time I was a student and I didn't have money.
Now we know what the life is.
Yeah, exactly. so I finally got myself a board. Like, it's a small board. It's black and it has all these switches, and I would be able to have like two microphones or more, probably four, I believe. But so, and then I have this table now. So, putting microphones on one end and then the other end, and having it all planned out. And, I actually bought this other part of the device where I'm able to have telephone conversations through
Nice.
my iPhone. So I would just connect through Bluetooth and I'd be able to record and actually have good quality conversations.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, of course, plans might take a while, but your heart is still there.
Yeah. Yeah, you were talking earlier about the differences between radio and podcasting.
Yeah.
And I was actually interested to know, like, what are these differences for you, as the experience of doing it, and also just like the main differences.
Right. So, straight off the bat, podcast doesn't really have that much rules. You have the freedom to do pretty much whatever you want in terms of your creativity or what you want to put out, but also you want to be responsible at the same time of what you put out. You don't want to just blabber and say, okay, this person did that. Of course, you got to be ethical at the same time, but there's more freedom in podcasting, I find, in my opinion, and the way you want your sound to go, and the way you want to play the music, or the way you want your voice to be. So that's pretty much like a great thing. And it also kind of creates a platform for people to connect with you if they find your stories or your podcast in general relevant, and then creating that community and such and such. Whereas radio has a similar field, I guess, but there's other aspects that you probably need to think about that you wouldn't, I guess, with a podcast. For an example, like, you need a really big board and really good microphone sounds, and an IP stream, and a programmer, and all these different things. So there's a lot of factors into that. But I think, like, in terms of storytelling, it could be the same, but not really, I guess. You don't have that much freedom, I guess, like how you would with your podcast. So it really depends on what really is relevant on the daily basis in radio. Sometimes you could also do different like docu series, I guess, using like voice. So you can pretty much play around with that. But you definitely have more freedom, I guess, in podcasting, which is what I pretty much love, I guess, and really make it your own, and really show your personality, your creativity, and like no one else has that about, I guess, like what you have. Like you can pretty much put your all into it, and you could be great, and then it could be amazing. Yeah,
so basically radio, you need much more equipment from the start if you don't have like already the radio station, or if you don't work at the radio station. And then if you do work there, then you have all these rules to follow. What if you do your own podcast? It's like, it's all about your own creativity and whatever you want. And is it possible actually for someone to do a podcast and then send it to the radio station for the radio to play it?
I think that is something that you could definitely do. That is something that I did look at while I was in Toronto. I had like 3 different radio stations that wanted to put my podcast at the time. But it was like kind of I was a one-man show. So it was kind of like, okay, like I would love to do all of these things, but like, I guess at the same time, it was like time. I don't know what it is, but like, sometimes being a student can be a lot, but at the same time you still do this and you have fun at the same time. So I guess at the time it was for me, like, I think I could only do or chew what I can handle at the time. So, but of course I had those options opened, and it is possible, I think. I mean, if you want to put your podcast on the radio, that is something that you could definitely do. I guess it really depends on the radio stations as well, of what they might think what is relevant on their rotation, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But it is possible, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, have you ever played like in the original like radio station? For example, I know that there's one in Mississippi
Mm-hmm.
because I was actually sent to you through Freddie Dixon, which is working at the radio station.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did have one of my podcasts being aired on JBCCS, but it was just like a one-time thing at the time. So I did put it on there. Um, if it was like a continuous thing, I guess, like with what the content that I would be producing, like I think I would definitely continue to do it on a regular basis, maybe once a week to start with or something.
Yeah.
It is something that anybody actually could do. I guess like just making sure you're ethical and watch what you're saying. Of course, like you can't be explicit, you know.
Censor.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it really depends on which radio station, of course. So.
Yeah, of course. And otherwise, in terms of diffusion, when you do a podcast, I know you've talked to me about SoundCloud. So we open an account on SoundCloud. I think yours is also on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
Are there other platforms that are commonly used for podcasting?
Yeah. So there's other, I guess, ways that you could post your audio. I mean, I tried to do a WordPress, but then you would need a business account to be able to do that.
Okay.
And then you could upload your audio onto that website. And then if you wanted that website to look like a professional way, I mean, you could put it there, but also you could have those audios automatically be published to other websites or other audio platforms. Like for an example, I guess for me, of course, I use SoundCloud, but SoundCloud actually will pull whatever's on the SoundCloud, let's say, to iTunes, and then maybe Spotify. Listen notes. These are just a couple of places that I actually have my podcast being pulled from SoundCloud. So I mean, there's a lot of places, I guess, that have my tracks, but you pretty much just need one place where you can publish them. So, I mean, one of them, I guess, I already mentioned WordPress, and the other one, SoundCloud. So, of course, the free version was the best choice for me at the time.
Yeah, I think for students in general, it's always going to be like, what is the easiest free thing that I can use? Go on, like, once when he gets involved, sometimes it's like more commitment.
Yeah, exactly. So SoundCloud was like the best choice for me. And then I was able to make other accounts, like third-party accounts, to be able to pull my tracks. So I don't have to like re-upload them to other, let's say, websites or platforms. So it would be automatic pretty much. And yeah.
You mentioned that you think your podcast is pretty well done, that you were putting a lot of thoughts to it. So what do you think what are the key things that makes a podcast a good podcast? Like what are the key successful aspects?
I think I listen to podcasts every now and then. I think it's basically like having a conversational tone and then really telling the story to the listener, and then you try to imagine, I guess, someone sitting next to you, and then you're speaking into their ear. Like, are you speaking in a conversational manner, or am I disconnected to that person? I mean, that's like the most important thing, I guess, with podcasting. I mean, in my opinion. And I guess being real with whatever story you're talking about. But I guess if you want, let's say, like high quality ones as well, like you could still have it very conversational, but then you could also mix it with sounds and really getting people to be part of that story of whatever it is. And then they get to feel what's happening, and you're kind of guiding them at the same time of where the story is going, or like what you might have discussed, let's say, with the person you spoke to, or like some information they probably didn't mention that was part of the story as well. So there's a lot of like ways that you can pretty much do it, but like in my opinion, like those are pretty much the two ways that would make a really good or the best podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like it's almost the art of storytelling. Like it's like a modern platform of how to like get storytelling out to the world.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much it. I believe that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. I think it's great. You mentioned a lot of aspects that was interesting, like the creativity aspect, the storytelling aspect, just a passion and to try to address something that you see is missing and you want to fill that gap. And so yeah, so for me, I would say, like, do you want to add anything else, or say something to your audience, to the youth that are right now in high school, probably like, very close to the age when you thought about doing the podcast, and so what would you like to tell them?
I think if you're really thinking about creating a podcast, or you probably haven't thought about it, but if you are, like, just hearing this, I guess, like, I think you can definitely benefit learning from people. That's definitely something that I noticed, I guess, when I did my podcast, even just like having conversations with people, like thinking, okay, this could be a really good topic on my podcast. And, because for me anyways, like whatever I put on there is something that I learned. So I find it interesting. Of course, I'm like, oh, I should, have a conversation with them, so this is something that, that I like doing, and I would want to continue doing, actually. And definitely something to do for you, I guess, especially, I guess, like, I don't know if this is going after Goose Break or before, but, like, there's so many stories that you would probably hear by just listening to your elders as well. Like, there's so much knowledge that, for me, I took for granted, I guess, like, because they're there and then living their everyday life, but then not really realizing the stories that they have would actually help me on a daily basis. So I think, like, if you were to go into the bush and thought, okay, I'll record something, like, I think that'd be a great opportunity. Like, that's pretty much one story that could probably be on your podcast, let's say, or someone's. Yeah, so
Goose Break story.
Goose Break.
Yes.
Just go for it if you're thinking of doing it. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much my ultimate message. And yeah, have fun with it.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much, Nick. Like, I've been enjoying this. That was my first time interviewing someone.
Oh, cool. You're a natural.
I enjoyed it so much, and I think that's just another example of like trying things you've never tried and just enjoying the process. And I definitely think like that's such a great way to get to know people and get to learn, and that was so stimulating. As like, I'm someone who's just really love learning, and I'm always passionate about people's story and getting to know their background and getting to know their life and what leads them to do certain things in life. So I think I've just discovered a new platform that I kind of like, oh, that could be a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Thank you so much, Nick. And we keep in touch, and you'll see us in the Youth Fusion Radio Hour podcast.
Cool.
And I want to say to everyone to go and also check Nick podcast, which is in Heure. It's going to be found on SoundCloud.